Hello and welcome to our Facebook Live. My name is Jenny Golsby and I'm the owner of the Complete Pet Company and Complete Canine Communication based in Brisbane, where we help people help their pets to have better nutrition, health and behaviour. And it also enables me to stay true to my core beliefs of ethics, choices, freedom and empathy. If you'd like to know more about what we do, you can visit our website, www.completepet.com.au. So tonight we have a really exciting guest. Her name is Lyndall Pinchen from Canine Vitality. And Lyndall is a canine naturopath, but it didn't start out that way. So before working with mainly dogs, Lyndall was a human naturopath. And she spent around 30 years in the natural medicine industry and 10 years working with dogs. And for about the past 8 or 9 years, I think it is, Lyndall actually has been consulting on and off through the Complete Pet Company. She has a great knowledge of herbs, essences, supplements, and how the body works. And it's always a pleasure chatting with Lyndall, as well as referring dogs to her when I just need that little bit of extra help. So please feel free to let us know where you are in the world and ask any questions by typing them in the comments section below. So welcome, Lyndall.
Hello, Jenny. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me on tonight. I'm pretty excited. Actually, I have to say I was tearing up a little bit in that gorgeous, gorgeous video, and I remember Tamika and all your other beautiful doggies that have crossed the Rainbow Bridge. But, yeah, that was lovely. So very nice.
I know. They've all gone. It's I'm really grateful, actually, to Kelly from Fairy Pants Photography because, yeah, she took that quite a few years ago, and it's absolutely beautiful to look back on. So thanks, Kelly, for taking that. And yeah, there's some beautiful dogs there, and they all live to a ripe old age as well, which is really nice. Yeah.
They did, yeah. So yeah, it's good to be on here tonight. I'm if you ever want me to talk about dogs or nutrition, I'm the person to talk to because I just get quite overtaken with that. I'm quite passionate about those topics, so I kind of talk underwater about those. So that's I'm excited.
I know, and it's funny because we've talked about doing live chats for quite a while now, and we've just sort of never got around to doing it. So this is part one, but we plan on doing some more, which will be really good. But before we start, Lyndall, because I've got quite a few questions I want to ask you and sort of bounce off as well. So tell us a little bit about yourself. And also why naturopathy was your modality of choice.
Yeah, so Jenny, I suppose really, when I grew up like in most people. I mean, I grew up as a real animal lover, despite the fact that I actually never really had a pet, ironically. But when I was in my very late teens, early 20s, I became quite unwell. At the time, I didn't know what was going on, but I was, it turned out I had chronic fatigue and a few other things. But I really had no idea. I was raised in the typical medical model, so I went off to my doctor and then off to another doctor. And I think I probably went to 6 doctors, and they all told me that I was nuts. And in the end, I just knew in my gut that something wasn't right and I had to find an answer. And that sort of led me to a naturopath, which, as you said, about 30 years ago, it wasn't as common as it would be today. So I had to hunt around to actually find a good one, which I did through my father actually at the time. And she put me, of course, on the right path in terms of my health. But the minute I went and saw her, I have to say it was probably on the day I went and saw her and I came home with all this, my mind was buzzing with all this information going, wow, this is unbelievable. I think it just resonated so strongly in me. It was like a light switch went on. I went, yeah, this makes perfect sense. All that other stuff I've been thinking about in the last 20 years doesn't make sense to me in terms of medicine, but this does. And it just led me on a path to want to help others and obviously go off and study and work with humans and then ultimately with animals, because it kind of came full circle then as wanting to work with pets. Really I wanted to work with animals at a younger age, but it kind of opportunity didn't arise. So when I sort of hit my late 30s, I went, yeah, it's time. I want to retrain. I want to go and work with dogs particularly. And here I am. So I do love anything to do with natural medicine. Why naturopathy? I think just because that was the modality that I was first introduced to. I did actually have an opportunity to study acupuncture, but I felt that if I wanted to do that properly, that I would need to actually go to China and live a little bit of the lifestyle, understand the philosophy. It's quite a complex philosophy, TCM and traditional Chinese medicine. And I really felt that if I was going to do it, I needed to do it right. So that sort of just led me back into studying naturopathy. And I haven't really looked back in the sense that that's, I'm as passionate about this industry now, 30 years on, as I was the first day I did my very first lecture and sat in a lecture room and started to learn about the body in a new way. So that has never waned through all the difficulties and ups and downs that one faces. It's just never waned for me. So I think, I think you know that too. But yeah, for me, I feel very grateful that I have the opportunity to not only use natural medicine for myself, but to be able to share that as an amazing tool for healing in a very natural and nature-based way. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's pretty handy because I know I've called on you quite a few times for myself.
I've called on me quite a few times for myself. No, actually, I call my herbalist friend, go, I need your help.
Yeah, so it's treat the dog, treat the owner, which is usually the case anyway. But you touched on like you said about herbs, and you also talked about Chinese medicine. So tell me, the herbs that you use, Lyndall, how are they different? What herbs do you use?
So my way of treating is through Western herbal medicine. So that would be as opposed to Chinese medicine, so they're very different modalities in terms of how you would, not only the types of herbs, of course, because obviously Chinese herbs are native to China for the most part. But the actual philosophy, I suppose, around prescribing them is quite different. So in Chinese medicine, herbs are looked at not so much in terms of their nutritional value, but it's more about how the energetics of the plant affect the body, and not only that, and how the herb moves through the body, and how the herb moves fluids through the body, and that type of thing. Western herbal medicine is a little bit different, and while there is definitely an energetic component to it, the energy of the plant, it really is more about using those specific herbs or a specific herb to bring balance back to an organ or a system, a body system. So we talk about an organ might be the liver, the body system might be the digestive system, or to provide nutrition. So of course, herbs are very nutritive. So like a natural vitamin mineral pill or tub or liquid. So yeah, I suppose it's really, if I can sum it up in one word, it's really about balance. And I suppose that really just is a smaller version of what natural medicine is all about. It's about balance. Balance is really key. And when we maintain balance, we maintain health. So herbs are used to regain or maintain balance. So, yeah.
And yours sort of come in like a tincture form too, don't they? So we can add them into a lot of them, not all of them, but, we can just add them into the food via a tincture rather so than a powder.
Yeah, so there are, of course, sorry, Jenny, there are different mediums. There's powders and dried herbs, and then, so a powder is essentially a dried herb that's ground down to a powder. And then you've got your fluid extracts and tinctures, which are ultimately more concentrated. But for me, I just find, because I suppose I was trained on them more specifically, and because I like the rapid response of a tincture in the body or a fluid extract in the body, because it goes into the bloodstream very rapidly. There's no requirement for it to be sort of taken through the digestive system in the sense that a tablet or a capsule might have to be broken down in that way. So it's actually, I'll tell you a very quick story. I sent some herbs to a lady the other day who has a dog that's been having some issues with a little bit of an anxiety thing around the home, the specific thing in the home. And she actually sent me back a message 24 hours after she'd started the herbs. And she said, would it be possible that the herbs might have started to work? Because she said, I've already seen a difference. And I said, it is actually possible to have a response that rapidly, especially in a dog that is a smaller that's metabolically smaller as compared to a human.
Yeah.
So they absolutely can work quickly depending on how they're prescribed, but the longer term benefit and the longer term effect is what you're aiming for. So,
Right.
yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so let's get on to a little bit about the topic tonight. So we've got raw feeding, health issues, and we're talking about the complete dog. So I wanted to start off first a little bit about, when I talk about, we're going to talk about raw feeding, it's more about the proteins and the things that we seem to be seeing or hearing about today. So, I've been feeding raw food for, 20 odd years and manufacturing food for 18 years. And the first species that we ever used was chicken. Mm-hmm. So complete meal chicken was our first species. And still today it would have to be up there amongst the most popular. So I love it. I feed it. My dogs eat it. I have never had any skin problems since my dog Simba, which is why we started the company in the first place, because he did have chronic skin problems. However, I seem to, I know that science has come forward and research, we're finding out more, but there seems to be this common question, and chicken is getting a bad rap. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think the first thing, Jenny, or probably the most significant thing, is that when you have a look at a meat like chicken compared to any other protein that maybe we might eat ourselves or feed our dogs, chicken is probably the top, it's right up there at the top in terms of its ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. So let's just rewind for a second. So we've got different types of fatty acids. Polyunsaturated fats are generally divided into omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids. So many of your listeners are probably familiar with that. If they've heard of fish oil, they've heard of omega-3, and omega-6 generally comes from your vegetable, like grain type sources. Now, there's a purpose for both of those in the body, and if we look at omega-6, it's essential to help actually at the right ratio. It actually increases inflammation, which is a good thing. It actually helps mount a response via the immune system, so that's important. So inflammation does serve a really important purpose. It's not always bad. And then if we look at omega-3 is really there to actually help support the immune system generally. So once again with that word balance, and actually I was thinking a lot about that when I was sort of just taking some notes tonight. So omega-6 and omega-3, your general ratio should be approximately anywhere from about 5 to 10 to 1 of your omega-6 to omega-3. Anything within that range is around about right. But unfortunately, if you have a look at, say, a chicken, and I'm talking now about a chicken that comes from a factory farmed option, so not your organic or anything like that, the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 can be anything from about 20 to 28 to 1, which is just, and you would know this better than me, it's whopping. Why is that a problem? Because once you start to get whacking big levels of one, it pushes down the other and you have an imbalance. And this is where we start to see an increase in inflammation. So a certain amount of inflammation is essential, healthy and good. Too much inflammation, it becomes a chronic inflammatory pattern, and this is where disease starts. And then if we push down the omega-3, there's nothing there to balance that. On the other side of the coin, if you actually had way too much omega-3 and not enough omega-6, you'd start to have really big problems with the immune system. So you've just got to try and look to see, we always want to achieve balance. But as I said, with the traditional chicken, and I think this is where a lot of this is coming from, your factory farm chicken, it really does contain way too much omega-6. Why does it contain too much omega-6? Well, the answer is, what on earth has the chicken been fed on all of its poor life? Generally, they'll be feeding all sorts of different poor quality grains. It could be soy, it could be canola, it could be, there's a whole lot of different grains that will contain way too much omega-6. So the bird's just taking in too much omega-6, and that just passes down through the food chain, and ultimately the dog eats the chicken, and that creates the imbalance of having too much omega-6. But I suppose what we want to consider then is it's not So you've got two types of chicken, of course. You've got your typical common factory farmed, buy a chook from Woolies type chicken, and you've got your beautiful organic or free range bird that has been able to walk on grass, able to roam and to eat worms and to spread its wings naturally and to be a chicken. And when that happens, it changes the whole ratio of omega-6 to 3 because the bird's eating a completely different diet. It's not eating a grain-based diet that has huge amounts of omega-6. It's eating a diet that's more natural to its own biology. And that actually does then push that ratio of omega-6 to 3 down. Does it bring it down extremely low? Probably not. Chicken's always going to be one of the higher omega-6 meats, and I think you'd probably agree with that. But if I think about your chicken, and I've experienced with your chicken with my own dogs, of course, too, that would be the example I mean, where the omega-6 level is as low as it's going to be able to possibly be. So I think that's why chicken, and I think it's very unfortunate that chicken has a bad rap, because I think and I had this conversation with a client today. I said, think about the dog in the wild, whether it's a dingo, a wild dog or whatever, and think about where the dog lives. So we're in Australia, but if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, it might be a wolf or some similar dog. What are the most common types of animals that dog will access? So is it a chicken, a rabbit? Like somebody asked me about crocodile the other day. Well, a dog is not typically going to take down a crocodile. It's not a really common animal or creature that a dog would go for, whereas a chicken, a goat, a sheep, those sorts of, as a pack animal, they would be able to access those animals. So I think you've got to also look at that as well. So,
for sure. And when we look at it, like you said earlier about the omega-6 being those vegetable oils, so us humans now are eating really, really high omega-6 versus 3, because of everything that we eat basically. So it's really not about the amount, because a lot of people sort of get caught up in how much omega-3, 6 do I feed. It's not really about how much we feed. It's more about the ratio, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So you're not going to get it down to a specific dosage so much, but as you say, you just want to be looking at, for every one of omega-3, you're going to have approximately 5 of omega-6 sort of things. So that the ratio and the overall balance of that. Yeah.
And so if you have a dog that is really compromised, if we have a dog that has chronic skin problems, ears, and we'll get onto that a bit later, but is really compromised, then we probably would have to look at maybe the chicken that we're feeding, because I get, and I know you do too, we have lots of people that come in and say, no, I can't feed chicken, my dog is allergic to chicken, all those types of things. So we've pretty well cleared up here. It really comes back to making sure that we're looking, and not just from a nutritional point of view, but from an ethical point of view, right? Like we don't want to be feeding factory farmed animals, full stop. I mean, we have a responsibility to that. It's not just about our dogs and cats. It's also about the animals that we feed. But if we have a dog that is really healthy or a cat that's really healthy, do you see a good organic chicken as a problem?
I actually don't. I know I was going to say something. I don't know. I'm just I'll wait, because I know we'll probably talk about this shortly. But I don't actually see it. As I said, I think chicken has gotten a bad rap. Are there other great meats to feed your dog? 100% yes. But chicken for me is still up there as long as it's source, as long as you know the source of the chicken and how, what type is it. As I said, has it been organically raised and ethically produced and so forth. So I don't think, but there are certainly times when you might avoid chicken, but there are certainly times when you might avoid any protein depending on what the problem is. And I think we probably will get into that later. But no, I personally, I know a lot of holistic vets do tend to steer away from chicken. And I think maybe that's because most vets do have a little bit more of a scientific mind. I've got to be honest with you, Jenny. As much as I'd like to say I'm a scientist, I just always work more intuitively. That just does not, just works better for me. So, and science has its place. But in terms of from a veterinary perspective, they will always tend to look at the science, and I think that's maybe why they're actually following that a little bit more closely. But I think I think chicken is back on the menu.
That's great. And I have to say, Lyndall, my mind's not very scientific either. Just common sense, it's just doing a little bit of reading and common sense and seeing the results, that's the main thing. Okay, so I really want to talk to you about this. Now, I could get in trouble, but it's another issue.
It's not like you, Jenny.
It's another issue that I want to, it's another hot topic. Don't squirt your water everywhere. That we hear about. So it's this hot and cold meats and everything in between. So, when we're talking about cold, hot, neutral, and warming meats, and I'm hearing more and more and more of this, where customers are coming in and they're really confused because they're being told that they can't feed that meat anymore because that's a hot meat, or that's a cold meat, or that's a this meat, or whatever. I really would love you to be able to clear that up as a naturopath, and just to help people understand a little bit more what all of that means, and where the meats fall into that when we're talking about dogs.
Yeah, so it's quite a big topic, that one. So, I spoke really briefly in my introduction about my opportunity many years ago to potentially go and study acupuncture, and the acupuncturist who suggested it to me at the time said, if you're going to do it properly and go and live in China for 10 years. So that's leading into what I'm going to say here. So this whole business of hot, cold, warming, neutral, cooling kind of thing is part of the traditional Chinese medicine philosophy. Now, if anyone knows anything about TCM, and I have studied a very small amount of it, so I am not an expert, but just from my own research and knowledge on it, TCM is a very complex philosophy, and to really understand it well, I do think you really have to actually live the culture a little bit. But in terms of how Chinese medicine looks at foods and herbs and so forth, they classify them into different energies. So it's, as I said, it's not so a food. So when we prescribe, for example, a meat for a dog, we might be thinking partially about the nutrition of that meat, the level of protein, the level of fat, the level of magnesium, minerals, calcium, whatever it might be, phosphorus, etc. But Chinese medicine is not really so much interested in that. They're actually more interested in the effect or the impact of what that protein or that meat or that food, I should say, has on the body's energies and movements of blood and lymphatic fluid and mucus and all the body fluids that mammals, us and dogs have. So they, as you said, they will talk about foods being hot, warm, neutral, cool, and cold. Now, I totally believe, and once again, I think I'm not going to have any sort of a shot at any sort of the veterinary medicine thing, but I think once again, a lot of this has come out of the holistic veterinary industry, where holistic vets these days, or I suppose really always, but it's more obvious to me these days that they are somewhat trained in TCM. Now, when I say somewhat, I mean, I suppose more of a basic, you're right, a basic training. And that's no disrespect to the vets. I'm just trying to make an observation here. So some of the basic things that they will be trained around, from my understanding, is that they will be looking, of course, at hot and cold foods and things like that, which is a fairly sort of, I suppose, basic concept in TCM. But really, if you're going to go down that road, you have to encompass a whole lot of other things that Chinese medicine encompasses. There's a whole lot of beliefs around the body and its meridian system, and which would be acupuncture. There's, in terms of the way you prescribe herbs. So the way I prescribe herbs is so far removed from the way that a Chinese herbalist would prescribe herbs. Once again, they're basing it on, is the body hot? Is the body damp? Is the body stagnant? Is the body cold? Is the yin cold or the yang hot? All these sorts of these terminologies. So it's very complex. Anyone who's ever looked at an acupuncture chart will know that it's just bamboozling. And I really believe that we are, by just focusing on a hot and cold food, we are somewhat symptomatically treating or symptomatically taking on a philosophy. So I'm not saying that's necessarily right or wrong, but I just feel that it's pulling out an isolated part of a philosophy that really needs to encompass a whole lot more to be fully effective. So when we talk about, in terms of meats, we've got your hot meats, your things like, I've just got a few notes here, just make sure I remember all the hot meats here. So, you've got some of your meats like lamb are classed as being quite hot. Turkey, for example, can be cool or neutral. You've got chicken that tends to be warming. You've got duck that's cooling. So there's a whole lot of different classifications on whether this meat's right for this dog, depending on the problem. Now, one thing I will say is that dogs as a mammal tend generally, this is a generalization, but they tend to run a bit hot, or they tend to run a bit warm. Yeah. So you might then think, well, geez, if they're always running hot, I suppose I'm going to look at my list. Well, gee, it says that duck is a cold meat. Maybe I should just feed duck. But I think that's really taking, as I said, taking something way out of context that actually there's a whole lot of missing pieces in the puzzle there if you just do that. And unless you're prepared to encompass the entire philosophy of something like TCM or whatever the modality is, you are just essentially doing a symptomatic-based type treatment. So I really feel that it's not overly beneficial to just change the meats alone from hot to cold or whatever. Are there dogs in there that might benefit from changing meats for other reasons? Yes, but I don't think the hot and cold, for me personally, I don't work off that. It doesn't resonate with me because I think that there are other factors at play there that I need to address. And I'm working on Western naturopathic principles, so this is not something that I would generally prescribe. But if you were seeing a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner who specialised with dogs, then they would probably do a whole lot of other things in there as well. Right. So I think it's just an isolated thing that concerns me a little bit, I suppose, because I feel that it's pulling just one. It'd be like if I said to you, Jenny, I'm going to prescribe your dog a herb, but I'm not particularly interested in what you're feeding them. I don't really care if that dog's stressed, and I couldn't care less what chemicals you put into their body, because I'm only just interested in giving you my bottle of herbs. Yeah. So that's probably extreme, but that's sort of how I look at it. So,
and I guess that's sort of the issue I've had a little bit, because, for years and years and years, I can't even begin to tell you the number. Well, the number of dogs that we've helped simply by just changing the diet, and that can be either a raw diet or a processed diet, and putting them on to something suitable. And you're right, sometimes we do have to take them off, say, something like chicken, and maybe put them on to goat. But the other one too, Lyndall, which I find quite interesting, is beef. We've got, like for all these years, I remember right back at the beginning, I was one who, can't make beef, not a complete meal beef, because dogs react to beef. It was like, if you go back 20-something years ago, beef is terrible. And then, I remember saying to Graham at some ungodly hour in the morning, it's not the beef. It's where the beef comes from that's got to be the problem, going back to what you were talking about, the grains being grain-fed, stresses, and when we talk about intense farming, and that can be beef that's not actually intensively farmed for its whole life. It might be what we call finished off in a feedlot. And so I started to think it's not the actual beef, it's where that's coming from. So we went in and decided to make a complete meal beef using free range, like farm beef. So it wasn't finished in a feedlot. And we have helped so many dogs on beef, but yet I keep hearing over and over again, dogs have to be taken off beef. What do you say to that?
I say poo-pah. No, I just look. That's a really. I'm only laughing because I actually do get so many people saying the same thing to me, and sometimes it drives me nuts. But anyway, the reality is, from my perspective, is that, and I will say this about any food at all, is that look, typically out of every 20 people that come to me for an allergy issue, there've been probably 18 of those have been told their dog can't eat chicken or beef. And I know we're talking beef at the moment, but chicken or beef, right? Yeah. And the reality is, when you have a look at the numbers of dogs that are really truly genuinely diagnosed with a 100% beef allergy, as in the allergy to the beef protein, it is actually quite low. It's not actually all that common. There are certainly dogs out there that do, don't get me wrong, but that the incidence of a true beef allergy is rare. Now, so many of the symptoms, and actually I had a lady today, exactly this problem. So many of the symptoms that are being exhibited, things like vomiting and diarrhea and the skin rashes and those sorts of things, which are kind of those classic food allergy or food sensitivity reactions, come down to, as you say, how did that cow live its life and how did it end its life? So when we actually have a look at, getting back to that omega-6, omega-3, when we have a look at the ratio of organic grass-fed, 100% beef, like the beef that you would produce, that you do produce, the ratio there is probably around about 7-1, which is well within that sort of framework. So that means that it's actually got a higher level of anti-inflammatory action than pro-inflammatory. So pro-inflammatory means to increase inflammation, which we don't want, and anti-inflammatory is to decrease, which we do want. So for dogs that are allergy prone, or I'm going to put that in quotation, allergy dogs, or any sort of skin issues in that sense, the underlying issue there in terms of the process is an inflammatory response. So we want to actually decrease that inflammatory response by changing the diet and doing other things that will reduce inflammation. Yeah. So I believe it's always the chemical load that is in that cow or any other animal that's mimicking an allergy response. So the hypersensitivity to those chemicals is actually the problem. So many times I've seen when you pull that dog off that factory farm beef and you put them onto a really good certified organic beef, such as yours, or there might be others out there. You don't have that. You don't have that problem. And in fact, if you look at pure, well-made bone broths that have been made on beef, that is one of the best anti-inflammatory tools for the gut. So I am a big,
pretty easily absorbed.
Yeah,
definitely.
Definitely. And I really think that, once again, it's just more the chemical load that's in any food. It doesn't have to be beef, but any food, not necessarily the protein of that food, or I know there's gluten and other things in grains and that we should avoid, but in terms of the protein from the meat, it's so commonly not that. So
yeah, absolutely. So we produce a chicken, a kangaroo, a goat, a beef, turkey when we can, pork. Pork is absolutely beautiful. Yeah. And we're also have another one that we're just sort of playing around with at the moment that we're finding really beautiful. And all of those meats are absolutely fantastic. And I think the only difference that I'm, am really mindful of is young dogs, so puppies and anything up to sort of 6, 8, 10 months of age. I'm really mindful of giving them game meats because they're very low in fat. Would you agree there about, I usually say chicken and beef, funny enough. They're the two species that I tend to put them on, which is good. Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you have a look at the profile of chicken and beef, they're actually quite good for puppies because they've got that level of fat, they've got the level of protein, they've got the, in the form that you give it in terms of that organic, they've got a good ratio of omega fats and other nutrients that growing puppies require. So, you're not going to want to go in there with a kangaroo or a venison or something like that, because and I've seen that happen. I've seen people come to me that have had their puppies on kangaroo, and these dogs are just emaciated. And as you well know, they just strip back so quickly. They're really hungry, yes. So that nice bit of fat in there, that it's just a solid food for a puppy. So both of those, definitely. I feel,
it's funny. I've just recently taken on a little greyhound, Gracie. I keep going to call her Macy Gray, Gracie May.
Oh, God.
Well, it was going to be Macy Gray, but Gray didn't like it, so we had to change it to Gracie May.
May.
But when I first got her, a couple of things I noticed. She was really hot, like her body was really hot. But when I gave her a bone every morning, because my dogs eat a bone every morning, 365 bones a year, all she wanted was fat. Like she could not get enough fat. And we've had her 3 weeks today, I think. 3 weeks today. And that's sort of stopped now. Now she's quite happy to eat a bone, but she just could not get enough fat. It was amazing.
I mean, fat's such an important fuel in terms of, like, as a human, we tend to think of fueling on carbohydrates, although we don't, we eat way too many of those. But a dog really fuels so well on fat. So, and I mean, fat's so important for the health of the body, the health of the brain, the gut. There are just so many reasons why a dog needs a good amount of fat, the right type of fat, and within balance with everything else, of course. But I think people sometimes forget a dog's a dog, and they think about, I don't think I would feed myself that amount of fat, so I should probably go low fat for my own dog. And there's a time when you might do that for a dog, depending on their issue. But I actually think most dogs don't get anywhere near enough fat. I don't think they get enough fat. Yeah, so
I absolutely agree. My dogs eat quite a bit, like they get a good fatty bone in the morning, and I've never ever had a problem. And I think that's because, and we'll talk about that, there's no chemical overload. We mentioned hairy pants photography at the beginning. Kelly's got a question here, Lyndall. I'm just going to pop it up. Can you read that?
I can. Hello, Kelly. Love your work. Yeah, that's an interesting question, isn't it? And like I said before, Kelly and Jen, there is a time that not everything is going to suit every dog, So in this instance, it could be that Lulu, and I do remember Lulu, Lulu may just not because of her constitution, so her body strength and vitality and just her constitution or her genetics, she just may not do so well on those particular proteins. So if we look at kangaroo and camel, we're thinking more of a game meat. I do find some dogs just do, I've had a dog in the past that every time I gave it kangaroo, it just kept throwing up. It didn't matter what I did, just threw up. No health issues, just threw it up. And I think it's possibly that it may not necessarily be I wouldn't necessarily say an allergy, but it could just be a bit of a sensitivity to that particular, as I said, 2 of those are game meats. In terms of the beef, she might just be actually she may be a dog that is sensitive to beef. Whether that's a true blown allergy, you would have to obviously go and get that specifically tested through a vet. But I think probably it's just her gut is a little bit just hypersensitive to particularly those more gamey meats. I just find some breeds don't do as well on a game meat. And whether that's, if I think about a working dog, they just seem to lap it up. They love it. But if you think about some of the more designer breed type doggies, they tend not to be quite so good on that, and whether that's a little bit of a genetic thing there. So I think it's just a matter of not necessarily. So, I mean, the good thing here is that Lulu's got lots of other choices, and I think, you know, if you were still...
And also it's quite interesting because Lulu does fine on pork and chicken. So there you go.
See, this is it. And you know, I can hear people when I share this interview, I'm going to have people going, "What do you mean pork?" But I know the quality of your pork. And pork, once again, has a bad rap for all the right reasons. Factory farm pork is a horrible meat, I have to say. But the type of pork that you have got your hands on is pretty amazing. So once again, and remember, it's always that thing of, like anything, we are all biologically unique. Sure, we've all got, you know, the dog's got 4 legs and a tail and a, you know, 2 ears, but in terms of their uniqueness, in terms of what they can tolerate, there's always going to be a dog that can't eat this but can eat that, whereas the next dog is fine on that. And it's biological uniqueness, you know, individuality. And it's the same whether you're a dog or you're a human. So,
And Kelly's just put there too that she's got no idea why it's commenting from Hairy Pants Photography. Kelly, we don't mind. We love your photography. I mean, I've got all those beautiful pictures.
Free advertising.
Dogs, and Susan's had her dogs done professionally, and I've got a beautiful picture here, just amazing. And I love the way Kelly works because she uses this really long lens, and she doesn't put any pressure on the dogs to, you know, perform for the photos. So yeah,
I'm sure I'm sure Kelly's got a sponsorship deal in there somewhere. That's all good.
I love her work. I really love
her work. Her work is truly beautiful. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let me have a look what else I've got here. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, now that we've, you know, sort of talked about the meats and omegas and put some of those things to bed. Health issues. So we see a lot of health issues and skin issues, and it's really sad because a lot of the time I know, same with me with behaviour, I'm the last person, and you usually are too, you know, so people have tried everything and then they give us a ring or they come in and say,
pick me.
We heard you might be able to help, and it's like, yeah, okay, so we have to undo a few things. What would be one of the main issues that you see with dogs? You know, if you're just sort of bang off the cuff, what would be the main problem that you see?
Well, I was going to say skin ear, which is one, but the reason I say skin ear is one is because although you may think that the ear is separate to the ear is actually forms part of the skin in terms of an organ, the skin being obviously an organ. But I think if we just talk, I suppose, generally as a skin thing, skin's just got to be up there, I suppose, is just about number one. Stress is also another one. But in terms of what we're talking about, I think skin's probably a bit more relevant. And it really is skin. So by the time a dog is showing a skin problem, a lot of other things have had to go on internally for that to manifest physically. So the manifestation of a skin rash or an ear infection or whatever, anything that you can see, is purely a reflection of what state the body is internally. So if your skin is glowing, if dog's skin is glowing, glossy coat, all that, well, you can be pretty much rest assured that things are probably traveling along nicely inside. But once you start to see that skin erupt in any way, a few things have gone out of balance before it gets to that. But then having said that, it's so avoidable. I think we think as humans that, and I've had this, and I'm sure you have too, Jenny, I've had so many people say to me, oh, yeah, my dog gets a rash, but that's normal because it just happens every year. It's just normal. And it's not normal. It's not normal. And it's so preventable for the great majority of dogs. Yeah, look, I know there are dogs out there that come into this world and they're unfortunately genetically off the bat they have problems, and sometimes there's just nothing you can do about that. But in terms of the general population of dogs that experience skin issues, it's so avoidable from just a few steps. If we just started from the beginning and did a few fairly easy steps, then we could not only prevent skin problems but a whole lot of other things, which of course is another topic for another day. But in terms of skin, it is so preventable. So
it's interesting because I don't know, we seem to have a lot of dogs with ear infections come in. I had a lovely customer a while ago with a little dog, a young dog with like a few skin problems, and we changed the diet and then the ears, and it was just a few things that we had to tweak, and those ears cleared up in no time at all. And I think sadly what happens, or what I see a lot, is that we see dogs being treated for their ear. So they're getting, antibiotics, or they're getting this, or they're getting that in their ear. And I'm constantly saying to people, it's a much bigger picture that we need to look at. Because if we just give antibiotics, we clear it up, but we suppress it, compress it, and then it comes back even worse, which is, what you do. So a lot of those ear infections, like you said, are connected to a lot more than that. Definitely. So what have I got here? I've got loads of things. So again, why is it important when we do that we we don't look at the ear? Like, I'm not worried about the ear. It's the same as if someone comes to me and they say, my dog is chewing on the lead when I go out for a walk. I automatically go, I'm not concerned about the dog chewing on the lead when it goes out for a walk, because there's a much bigger picture. We need to look at the complete dog.
Sure.
So what would you say to those customers that have itchy dogs and ear infections and those types of things?
Yeah, so it really does require a little bit of a mindset shift. And I remember when I first started on my own journey in natural medicine, it did take me a while to get my head around it, because, I didn't know I'd been raised in a typical medical, my go to the doctor kind of thing. So it does require a little bit of a rerouting of your mindset. But when we have a look at the body of the dog or of any animal, human, whatever, everything is connected. You don't see two ears walking down the street on their own, or you don't see a foot walking down the street on its own. Everything is connected together as a package for a reason. Yeah. And if we only isolate one particular area and think that, if we say, for example, the ear, which is a good one, because a lot of people do have a little bit of trouble connecting ear to body. So the ear's up here, and there's usually a big, beautiful, flappy ear over that ear, big, hairy thing over the ear, and that's the ear. But people have said to me, well, I don't really understand, how is my dog's ear infection related to their digestive system? Mm-hmm. And so it is a little bit about re-educating them, but remembering that every part of the body is connected. So whenever, and if we look once again at an ear infection, whenever there's an ear infection, I actually go, well, yay, because I know that the body's telling me something here, and it's telling me loud and clear. So if your dog's got an ear infection there, it's going, red alert, something's wrong, we need help inside, and we're just showing you that we've got a problem here that you can see, obviously. So, yeah, okay, we do some topical support for the ear for sure to relieve the dog of pain or itching. But it's way more important to track that back and find out where it's coming from. And I can guarantee you just about 100% of the time that is going to come from what's called gut immunity. So from your dog's digestive system and the part of the immune system that lives within your dog's digestive system. So there is around about 80% of your dog's immune system, 70 to 80%, that sits in the intestinal tissues, so in the in the small intestine. And it's the same for us as humans. So they're not separate. They're all actually, we're learning so much now about the connection between that and the gut-brain connection and a whole lot of other things. So it's very important to understand that whatever's going into the body and whatever's being put onto the body must be supportive of the gut, of the digestive system, because that ultimately dictates what the immune system is going to do. And if those two are not happily playing together, then you are going to see signs of ear infections, skin rashes, joint problems, seizures, anxiety, whatever. So it is, once again, it's very much all connected.
Yeah, and it is connected. So it's almost like, well, you know, I have a bit of an issue at the moment with my ear. I'm completely deaf in this ear, and I've got like a jumbo jet that goes through it permanently, and a little bit different to an ear infection. It's not an ear infection or anything, but it starts to play havoc with everything else. You know, you're tired, you can't sleep. You know, and then everything becomes out of balance. So we haven't got homeostasis going on at all. We've got this total imbalance in the body. So that is, you know, very, very important. So we need to look at diet, and we need to look at, of course, stress, which is a topic all on its own.
Yes, a very long one.
That word stress means a lot of things. And we also need to look at, like you touched on, chemical overload. We're getting close to 7 o'clock. So I want to do a part 2 with you, Lyndall. And in part 2, I want to talk to you about how can we relieve dogs, you know, topically of, because there is nothing worse than seeing dogs, and we see cats too, that are suffering so badly from itching. And we have professionals telling people to put Elizabethan collars on them.
It's terrible.
Put socks on their feet and put jackets on them to stop them itching, you know. And I was only saying to a lady a couple of weeks ago, if I had a really bad leg with mosquito bites all over it, and you tied my hands behind my back so that I couldn't scratch it, I would seriously think about jumping off a cliff.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
It would do crazy things to my head. So instead of restricting the animal from getting to it, I want to talk to you next time about how we can help people to understand, to relieve those things. And there's lots of nice things that we can do that are really gentle and really natural, and also natural alternatives to the chemical things that we use for parasites as well. So I want to sort of go a little bit a la natural next time we talk, if you're into that.
Yep, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
I think that's important too, because I think what people need to understand is the natural road is, for me, it's always going to be the best road. But the reality is that when you do start a dog on a natural regime, there's a time factor. It's a long road. It's not, we are not taught, the philosophy is not quick fix, and this is where a lot of people do stumble. So during the time while the body is starting to do its thing and detox and heal and all of that, we do need to absolutely 100% have some supportive measures topically for those sorts of situations, because the reality is, if you've got a dog that's continuing to scratch and create that inflammatory process on the skin, it doesn't really matter what you're going to do internally. Just the body's not going to go into any sort of healing mode. It's just going to try and deal with that local.
No, and neither is the brain, you know, and it just becomes so stressful. And so
that's right.
Therefore, that elevates those hormones in the body, which then compromises the immune system. So you're going round
and around we go.
Hugely, it's the same as when I'm working behaviourally with dogs. You know, I always say to people, it really, you know, it's slow, and keeping a diary. And I'm doing that with Gracie May at the moment, you know, because I'm using some natural modalities with her just to get on top of some things that we've got going on structurally. And I'm keeping a diary because, you know, when you can look back on that diary and say, oh, wow, yes, there is improvement. Last week, you know, she was looking like this or doing this, and now she's not. I think we tend to forget a lot of the time. Yep. Because if we take an antibiotic or a steroid or something like that, it's pretty well instant.
Yeah, that's right. And we live in that instant gratification. We want those results now, or actually we want them yesterday. So making the choice to go down a natural road does take some commitment and some will, a little bit of willpower there to just remember that, you know, you're not going to get the result as quickly, but ultimately it's better, you know. It's ultimately it's you know, it affects change for the long term. So
I was just going to say it's long term.
Yeah.
Okay, so Kelly, Kim's got Kim has got a question.
Hi, Kimmy.
So if you have a dog that's ingested a large cloth type of item, then regurgitated the item in its entirety, would the dog gut be inflamed? Where you would perhaps need to change the dog's diet, or would you keep feeding raw? Would keep feeding raw be okay, as in the gut isn't affected if the dog expelled the item?
Yeah, look, I suppose it's going to depend. It's not, you know, if you've got a generally healthy dog that doesn't really have any specific gut issues per se, you know, they're generally healthy and they've just one day gotten into the laundry or whatever, then there will potentially be some acute inflammation that will generally settle fairly quickly. What I would recommend for a dog like that, if they are, you know, as I said, if they're generally healthy, no particular problems, but they've done this and you know, they're a little bit funny for a couple of days, I'd probably just use something simple like some slippery elm powder or something just to soothe down. Slippery elm's the go-to for anything with the gut. If you're desperate and you can't get anywhere else, you know, if you can't get any other herbs or any other supplements, to have some slippery elm on hand is very good. That will basically just coat that digestive tract, soothe it down, bring down the inflammation, and doing that for, you know, a few days is generally going to be enough. If you've got a dog that's already really gut compromised, that's a different situation, and you may well change diet temporarily. You might do, Kim, you might actually do a couple of days of a little bit of cooked diet with some nice broth or something like that in there. I don't think it's necessary for every dog, but necessarily necessary.
Do you know, I was just thinking, Kim, you know what I'd say? I'd say it's better out than in. Move on.
Definitely, yeah. Look, I don't think there's any real need to be too worried, but you could do something for a couple of days. But, you know, if you had a very sort of gut compromised dog, that would be a very different matter, and that could actually trigger off an attack of some no obvious issues. And look, a bit of broth, a little bit of slippery elm. I don't think you'd have to be too worried. Much like babies, dogs are pretty resilient when it comes to things like that. I mean, gosh, some of the things you see them eat, they do have a very strong stomach, Kim, as you probably remember. So
yeah,
it's built that way.
She said, or a probiotic.
Oh, look, I don't think that's necessary. No, I don't think that's, no, you don't, it's probably going over the top. I think just, you know, a bit of broth, bit of slippery elm, or just a little bit of, you know, if you were really worried, as I said, a little bit of cooked diet if you wanted to, but, you know, no real big deal unless it's a significant issue. Yeah.
I want to know what he ate.
Like, yeah, I want to know how he got. Where was he when he ate it?
Unbelievable. All righty. Awesome. So I was going to talk to you a little bit about goat, but we've got, first of all, I'll just ask if anybody's got any questions that they wanted to ask. We've had sort of numbers going up and down, but there's not really. But I mean, you can put the questions in the page, and you know, I'll be keeping an eye on it, and I can send them to Lyndall, or I can answer them myself depending on what exactly it is. No, nothing there at the moment. But well, I might just touch on this, Lyndall, because I did have it in my notes. One of the species that I absolutely love for dogs that have health issues. So a dog would come in that's either got like an irritable bowel, you know, a bit of an upset tummy, or chronic skin problems, and has been on a lot of antibiotics and, you know, course after course after course. I always point them in the direction of goat. And we started to produce goat. We did a lot of research a lot of years ago And I kept coming back to goat, and we've been producing it for quite a long time. But sometimes we have trouble getting it because of the quality of the species that we use. So using the trim, so we're using good meat. And it's quite difficult to get in this country because a lot of it goes overseas, bone in. So it gets sold bone in. So, when we can get it, we get it. What do you think about goat? Do you like goat, and what has your experience been in that area?
Yeah, so when if we go back to that hot and cold meat, goat is actually classed as a bit more of a warming meat. It's not hot like a lamb, but because they're a similar sort of animal, and in that sense that it does kind of come in that more warming category. But I really do like goat. I think in terms of it's the type of protein that goat has. It's a much easier to digest protein. When my son was a baby and when I stopped breastfeeding him, he went straight into goat milk because I knew it would be much easier for his little tummy, and that has borne out to be true over the many years. But goat as a meat or as a milk is actually very much easier to digest. So for those dogs that have had a compromised gut or skin or whatever, that it does work very well for that. And I've seen that over and over again. When I first came to work alongside you, I hadn't prescribed a lot of goat because it was a matter of who has goat. It's very hard, as hard to get. But of course, back in those days, it was a little easier for you to get it than it is now. But every dog that I continually put onto goat, and there was a lot of them over the years, and a lot that you, of course, had as customers had put on, the results speak for themselves. I don't think I even need to worry too much about any science there. It's, as I said, it's results. The results have proven to me that I'll be really honest, if I can't think of a single dog that has been on goat that hasn't really benefited from it. And that's, and I can't think of one. I mean, is that dog fussy and not wanting to eat it? Well, maybe that's a different issue. But in terms of actually the therapeutic benefit of feeding goat as a meat for any sort of gut issue or skin issue, I think it holds its own for sure. But once again, it's the where you source that meat from, and I know you go to great lengths to source a very high grade meat. Which drives you insane and costs you a bomb, but that's the commitment that you make, and I have so much respect for you about that for that reason, because you do not compromise, and I love that about you. You do not compromise where you could, and many others out there do. You don't. So if you are looking for free ad, if you're looking for a really good quality meat, get Jenny's food, because she doesn't compromise on quality. But I mean, I've seen the results. And a quick story on that too. When I first started, I'd been raw feeding for about 15 years, I suppose, when I first met you, and the dogs I had at the time as far as I was concerned, they were healthy. I didn't really have any issues with them. So I put them on your food, and I noticed, it was subtle, but after about 3 months, I remember my husband at the time, I said to him, "Do you reckon the dogs are looking better?" And he was like, "I don't know." I said, "Yeah, I'm sure they are." And when I really took a good look at them, I realized that they'd actually gone up another 10 or 15% in their health, and I already thought that they were healthy, but it just went up another notch, and then they stayed there, kind of thing. So yeah, very interesting. But once again, it's the quality. It's the quality of the food.
I think too, it's the quality, and it's also and I will not compromise, and I know lots of people get really angry with me, but I just go, no, if I can't get it, that's it. We just don't have it. Sorry, everybody, we don't have it. So I really try and encourage people that are on goat, that have been on goat for quite a while, or the dogs have been on goat for quite a while, to try another species, because if we get caught out and we can't get goat, then, sometimes we'll have it in the freeze-dried product. But, if we don't have it, then that can be a problem for some people, and they panic, and then they'll go off and buy goat somewhere else, and that can be an issue. So yeah, it's always pretty important to do that. there was something else I was going to say, and it's actually gone. Now, Kim, it's a Chuck's cloth.
I thought it might have been a Chuck's.
Desi ate a Chuck's cloth. She doesn't know where it came from. It was all twisted up when he expelled it.
Oh, good on you, Desi.
Yeah, and that's a sign of a little healthy dog, that has no problems with that.
Didn't have to have surgery. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's the same as, like I say, with bones and things. If they vomit them up, it's always they're better out than in, as far as I'm concerned.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I think what you might have. I'm going to preempt what you might have been thinking, Jen, before Kim's comment there about the Chucks. I could see Desi doing that. What meat might you go to if you can't get goat? And I think that when I think about your range, I know that I've myself, in the times that I haven't been up to prescribe goat because you haven't had it, I have. Many times I've gone to turkey because I do love your turkey, and I do find that works really well for a lot of dogs. And I've used kangaroo, of course, but I am mindful of certain dogs that, like I said before with Kelly's comment, that again meat just doesn't suit some dogs for the reason that it just doesn't suit them, and that's not because they're allergic to it. It's just like certain foods don't suit my body, and it's not because I'm allergic to them; it just doesn't suit my body. So
Yeah, that's very true. And some dogs prefer some species over the others. So,
Well, the reality is too. Well, that's it. The reality is too. I think sometimes we also forget about taste. So, like anything, I mean, I do eat some meat, very, very little, well, virtually no red meat, but more fish and chicken and those sorts of proteins. But, there are some, I would always gravitate to seafood because that's my taste. Whereas some people will gravitate towards a steak, and it's some dogs just really enjoy the flavor of beef, or they really enjoy the flavor of goat or whatever. So that they've got their own little feelings and tastes and things like that as well. So all of us know of a dog or our own dogs that have a certain thing that they love, like a little piece of cheese or a piece of watermelon or a piece. Oh, my dog loves this. My dog loves that. That's because dogs love food and love variety in the way that we do. So they've got their own little personalities. So they
do. Okay, has anybody got any questions before we wrap it up for this one? And Liana,
hello, Liana.
Liana, hello. Can't believe I forgot.
Liana, we've only just started. You're not late.
No worries, Kim.
Have a good night.
That's really funny. Okay, so next time we come back, Lyndall, we're going to talk about part 2, what we can do, like on the outside. We've talked about on the inside. So now we're going to talk about on the outside, what we can do to help these dogs and help people. Barbara says she's looking forward to the next session. And, if you've got any ideas or things that you'd like Lyndall and I to talk about, because we're sort of going to make this a bit of a regular thing because we work extremely well together, and there's stuff that I can help Lyndall with and there's stuff that Lyndall can help me with. So we do refer to each other, and it does work very, very well. So we would like, you to talk about, ask us questions or, a topic.
Definitely.
Okay, so Lyndall, your website is
up on the screen right now.
Herbs for Healthy Dog, Herbs for Happy Healthy Dogs.com.au. So you can find out more on Lyndall's website, and she's got lots of beautiful herbs and some that she's sort of put together for specific things as well. So you can go on and have a little bit of a read about that, and we can talk a little bit more about that next time as well. She also has a Facebook page, which is Canine Vitality, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. It's yes, Canine Vitality. Yeah, and you can follow me on Instagram as well and YouTube. Right. So all of those, all of that is on the website. So
she's everywhere.
Oh, I don't do Twitter. I don't do Twitter.
You don't do Twitter.
That's for Donald Trump.
Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. So you can find out lots about Lyndall, and she also consults out of the Complete Pet Company. So you can contact Lyndall, if you're in Brizzy and want to come into the shop. And she consults in the no zone. So it's a beautiful, calm environment. It's not like going into a normal sort of sterile clinic as well. And I also just wanted to mention really quickly, in August, we've got the course coming up, which is 3 consecutive Sundays with Dr. Amber Batson, who is a UK veterinary behaviourist. And it begins on the 22nd of August, and we'll be talking about stress in dogs, why worry. And I've done quite a few courses with Amber now, and she's a really, really, really good teacher, lecturer, and boy, does she know her stuff. The science, she's right behind the science. So there's lots of good information there. You can find that on the Complete Pet Company's Facebook website. Just click on the completepet.com.au and go to the events section, and there's information there as well. And I also just wanted to put this up here for anybody who is interested in just learning more about raw feeding. So quite a few years ago, when I was in Norway at one of the dog symposiums, Connor Brady was there, and he did a talk, and I got to spend a little bit of time with Connor afterwards and sort of chat to him, not that often, but every now and again. And he's recently written a book, and I've got the book here. So this is the book.
Ooh.
For anybody. See if I can get it straight. There you go. For anybody that's interested in finding out more, it is full on, loads and loads and loads of really good information all about raw feeding, the pros, the cons, etc., etc. I won't go into too much into that, but he must have a complete team is all I can say. And so that's a great book.
Awesome.
Okay.
A bit of light reading for an evening.
Yeah, just a bit.
Looks like an awesome book. I'm going to get a copy.
It's a great book. We've got one at work for the girls, and I bought one for me as well. So I've always got my head in it. And Bamford, thank you, ladies. Very interesting. Anne says, Liana, do what she did and put it in the calendar. That's a really good idea, Liana. She said, I usually do, Anne, or if she forgot to do it. Great to see you all here, guys. Thank you very much. Lyndall, thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no worries.
Next time.
Okay, bye-bye, everybody. Have a good night. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.